I'd like to call the St. Clair County Board of Commissioners Committee on Environmental Public Works Committee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you take the roll?
Commissioner McConnell?
Here.
Commissioner Tamian? Commissioner Bone?
Here.
Commissioner Dunn?
Here.
Commissioner Rushing?
Here.
Commissioner Graytop?
Here.
Commissioner Heineman?
Here. At this time, could we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, do we have any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I will so move. Support.
It's been moved and supported. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Do we have any citizens wishing to be heard regarding environmental or public works matters? Seeing none, we have an update from John Jones on real-time source water early warning system. John, for those that may not know, is a member of our County Health Board.
Good evening. I'm just going to do a real brief introduction. This is a pilot study that's being conducted through Dr. Westrick at Wayne State, and there's two different systems that will be used, one at the Marysville plant, one at Detroit water plant. And the idea is to get an actual cost of what it's going to cost to operate these systems and how easy they are to work and maintain. And the local plant operators will be invited to come and operate each system, and their input will be used as to what they want to use on the river. So we have a couple of people here. We have Dr. Westrick, Judy Westrick. We have Steve Demick from the Health Department, who's been really instrumental in getting this done. And of course, Bill Westrick. Without him, this wouldn't be happening. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Westrick, and she can explain the whole system to you. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everybody. And today I'm going to talk to you about kind of, I would say, one of my dreams and my dad's dream after the '09 close down of the urine to Erie project, which was continuous monitoring at that stage. Although people somewhat maintained it, we really were still missing a crucial part of it, which is volatile organic compounds. So what we're going to talk about today is an opportunity that a group of us took. So John Jones, Greg Brown, Steve, Barry, Bill, my dad, William, Chris, and took when Wayne State announced an internal grant through the Herb Foundation to look for ways to improve our water quality along the St. Clair River, Lake St. Clair, and then into the Detroit River. At that stage, we were actually already meeting trying to figure out how to get the money together. So we put together a proposal, and the proposal was funded. So to the tune of funding the proposal, we're going to talk to you today about how we're progressing and what our goals are and what we're going to do. So the overview of my talk is going to be goals and objectives, and then we're going to talk why early warning is important, past monitoring. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that, just quickly review it. Proposed systems to evaluate where we are today and what we hope our outcomes are come October, November. So our goal is actually to create a long-term monitoring system that will allow us to do early warning for drinking water plants along the St. Clair River. How we'd like to do that is we'd like to set up a series of what we call online monitoring. So that means the monitoring will be continuous throughout 24/7. It would always be going on. And specifically, what we're going to be looking at is volatile organic compounds. Volatile organic compounds are compounds that are typically released by industry or boats leaking from the storage vessels along the way. They are solvents. They are the backbone for gasoline and a lot of the synthetic things going on the other side of the river as well as ours. So our key objective is to basically set up what we call 2 pilot plants. The goal of the pilot plant is that they would be trials, so that will allow us to actually take each step and evaluate how well it would work in our current format. Our current format is basically, we'd like the drinking water operators and the drinking water systems to be responsible for what's going on there. And if they can't be responsible, we'd like to identify the difficulties or where they may have difficulties and how we're going to cover that cost and help them be successful. So one of the problems with the earlier system, it was like 2006, 2007, was a bunch of contractors came in, they set up the system, and then they took phone calls occasionally, but it wasn't owned by the drinking water operators who are there, if they're not there 24/7, they're always there when the plant's operating. This model was set up at the Ohio River, so they have about, on the Ohio River, that's 100,000 miles, or 100,000 miles, so every 100 miles they actually have what they call continuous monitoring, so they can monitor spills and industrial things going on. I worked at Cincinnati Water Works. I've actually worked on that system. I can tell you right now, it's the drinking water plants that are responsible for those systems, and the money then is facilitated to go through that drinking water plant to maintain it. So why is early warning important? Well, early warning means that it actually is going to provide a safe, potable water, drinking water, which gives you that heads up, there's a problem on the river, something went wrong. You can identify after you figure out what you need to do first to guarantee safety and potable water for your consumers. And then after that, it'll give you enough information to go back and say, okay, what did happen? Or did somebody report a spill? Oftentimes when a spill is reported, even the best system, it's like playing telephone. It takes a while. So by the time you get that phone call, the spill is either beyond you or it's so close to you're struggling. This would allow us to basically monitor the whole river. It would provide also, then stepping back from that, it also provides this frequency and the amount of chemicals that are actually being spilled, which is important if you want to get control over what's going on from an environmental health perspective and a health perspective. Past monitoring systems, you can look at what was there before. So it was Algonac, Detroit, East China, Grosse Pointe Farms, Ira, Marine City, Marysville, Mount Clemens, New Baltimore, Port Huron, St. Clair, and Wyandotte. And then in the report, they were hoping to expand to Monroe and Fort Gratiot. The systems that they had at that time were gas chromatography and mass spec, total organic carbon analyzers, fluorometers, and then probes. The one that the one that was the most difficult to maintain and was not successful was the GC, or gas chromatography mass spec. And what we are looking at is replacing that unit, and I'll explain how we're going to replace it and what we're going to place with it and why it would be more successful. So what we're going to be replacing it with is what we call two options. It's either going to be the Foundation Instruments THM-RR, which is a THM analyzer, but it also can be used for organics. This unit is going to is in the Waterworks Park pilot plant. The specifications on it, it would sample every 60 minutes. It can only detect chlorinated VOCs, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, how that's a disadvantage. It uses a membrane technology, which is fairly new, and it actually looked more promising than the other, what we call concentrating step. It is still gas chromatography, but it uses a different detector, and the detector is just a simpler detector. It's called electron capture detector, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. So down here you see a picture of that, and that's what's on site at Detroit. At the Marysville plant, it's what we call a CMS 5000 VOC system. It's at Marysville. Its specifications, it monitors every 30 minutes. So every 30 minutes, you would know whether or not you saw these volatile organic compounds. It can detect all of concern. Now, all VOCs of concerns means that there was a study done on all the industries up and down the river, and based on the types of industries you have would be based on the type of volatile organics we would look for. There were 27 in the original list. This is set up what we call purge and trap, which means the water sample is brought into the bottom vesicle, you blow air through it, the air bubbles are condensed up at the top on a filter, and then they're released through heat, and then they go into the gas chromatograph, and then they follow by a different type of detector called a micro-argon ion detector, or frequently referred to as MAID.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
While you're on this, because I'm looking at the two, just so we can understand it better in
Yep.
this presentation. The one cannot, or can only do chlorinated water.
Correct.
Where this one will do both.
This one will do both.
And this is what you're looking to put in place?
Actually, this is, up until about a week ago, I actually thought we could get the other one to see both, and we've tried really hard. We can't. So we are now really seriously looking at this one. Right. So, all right, so just to give you an idea how this works from a gas chromatograph perspective, is you start off and you have what we call a carrier gas. Your sample, see where the flow controller is? That's where your sample would be introduced. The sample then goes into what we call a column. That column is coated with an absorbent material. And then so basically what happens is the VOC sticks right at the front of that column. And as you raise the heat, the compound, if your boiling point is lower, it comes off faster. And if you have a higher boiling point, it comes off later. So that column between raising the temperature and the absorbent capabilities starts separating the compounds, the different industrial VOCs that you'll see on the river. And you can see that on the right-hand side by looking at that little picture up there. And so that's what it'll look like. So from left would be time 0. Going to the right, that would be 2 minutes, and then the next one over would say be 3 minutes. And you would separate out the different types of compounds. All right?
If I could ask
Go.
another question. You'd be very good at this because you're a previous
I even
biology.
had a course in
A
instrumentation.
little bit,
chemistry.
but my understanding of a compound, if it's an industrial compound, that will not separate where a solution will. And this will pick up compounds that potentially hazardous compounds.
Right, so we've actually removed them from the solution, and they're actually in what we call gas phase, but they're all condensed. And they're sitting at the front.
The only reason I'm asking
Yeah, nope.
because if anybody wants to understand.
Absolutely, no, ask away, because it helps everybody. So no, so like I said, so it's sitting as a gas absorbed, and as the heat goes up, it actually moves it along. But it just turns out that the lower boiling points will move faster than the higher boiling points will. So this is an example, and this is from the Inficon. So what you see coming from the left to the right is those 27 compounds we talked about. Now you'll notice there's only 25 labeled, all right? The reason there's only 25 labeled is what we call 2 of them co-elute. So 2 sets, actually 2 of the same compounds will come off at the same time. So that was one thing that we kind of said, we weren't sure about that. But you can see everything is separating along. But if you look at, it was number 7. On 7, you'll notice it's a little fatter at the base. And the reason it's a little fatter at the base is because there's 2 organic compounds there. So our column, in theory, did not have what we call enough separation capability. But we got all 27 to show up, but it looks like there's only 25. Now, one might ask if that's a big problem. Well, the thing you can see about this chromatograph is you notice the spikes are very clear up, but notice how low those baselines are. So down at the bottom, see how smooth they are? That is critical because what was causing the problem on the mass spec is it wasn't smooth. So what would happen is the operators would get faults. You know, oh, you have a hit, and it wasn't really anything. Oh, you have a hit. And there's nothing more annoying than, as I know because I work in a drinking water plant, having a little alarm go off and 90% of the time it not be anything. So basically one of the problems we had is the alarms were going off constantly and there really wasn't a problem. Now this system is in Ohio and it's working successfully for the drinking water plants in Ohio. And again, looking over the data, why that is true is because our baseline is really smooth. And that will allow us to say, yes, there's a chemical, no, there's not. The 2 chemicals that co-elute, again, in my opinion, isn't a big deal because what we really want to know is if any of these volatiles are there, or if you see a new volatile, you have a reason to be concerned about the potential people are drinking things they shouldn't be drinking. So we will have, like we call warnings on them. So there will be a level, if they get to a certain level, the operators will be notified. If you can't tell the difference between the 2 chemicals, you would bear to the safe side. From here, you would you take a sample and you would bring it to either my laboratory, AKA at Wayne State, or you could bring it to Detroit. Detroit actually said they would run these volatiles for us very quickly to get an idea of what it was specifically, because the mass spec did tell you that. And that's what we'll run at the other location is the mass spec. But this definitely tells us that there are volatiles there are things that we don't want, and it will give you probably 95% identification except for those 2. Go ahead.
Bottom a reflection of the boiling points?
The graph. So actually, yes, if you actually looked at compound 1, that would be the lowest boiling point, and then the highest would be to the right. Yeah. And so if you look at the temperature gradient, you'd go to 40 to 200 degrees. Okay? So kind of sum up what we saw on the 2 different instruments so far. We requested 27 VOC compounds to be determined. On the Inficon, which as you just saw, all 27 can be detected. The minimum detection limit was 2 ppb, and that was being very conservative on the points, which is a very good low level, because only 1 benzene would be potentially above that level, and actually we could see benzene down at the 1. The most difficult was the vinyl chloride, and I want to highlight that because if some of you may remember, one of the big spills you had was a vinyl chloride spill. However, it's difficult, but you can see it. And then going over to the other side, the foundation instrument, 20 compounds can be detected. However, their minimum detection went from 2 to 20, which is much higher. And the other problem is we have 6 reported spills. We have more than 6, but we have 6 organic chemicals that have been reported to spill on the St. Clair River, and this current system can only detect 1 of those. So what we really found is that, sure, you can detect all the chlorinated things, but we have benzene spills, we have the xylene, P and M xylene spills, so those do not have what we call chlorines on them, or they're not chlorinated. So that is why we're already starting to lean toward the 5,000. So the initial stages we're at is that getting them set up, which there was a joke made as we were at Marysville the other day when we were trying to set up the 5,000 on Island Light Trine, is that, gee, maybe this is why the first time didn't work so well, is because you really should do a pilot to make sure that everything is looked at and that everything is smoothed out. So what we're looking at right now is evaluate the feasibility of building and operating the real time. So that's our big goal, is when you're done, we should be able to basically produce a final report which will have your standing operating procedures for any plant that would consider doing this. We should have basically the maintenance and the service systems, everything worked out so that you have a good spreadsheet to how much this is going to cost us to run, us being us or the state of Michigan. Network logistics, so okay, once we have it going, how are we going to communicate coming down the river? If you notice, Bill Parkus was in on this. They have models of the river, so the next thing is if we actually get a detect, can we actually use the model to predict when it would get to the next location? So we can start looking at that aspect. And then finally, again, the actual operation cost. You know, how do we get it going? What does it cost to buy it? What does it cost to keep it going once it's going? From this, what we're really hoping to do is that we could basically reinstate the Huron to Erie real-time monitoring network from a VOC perspective. And we're on that first step up to controlling it. So we just wanted to get you an update. So can I answer any questions?
Okay, do we have it? David?
I have about 3 questions.
Okay.
One is a statement. I believe in the past there was 13 locations that
Yes.
were doing this testing.
Yes.
We're way down now because of funding.
Absolutely.
Is there federal funding that initially
Yep.
came for this? If you do this, what partners are we going to have? We're still going to have 13 monitoring system, and what requirements can we force this on, let's say, Algonac, or you can pick
Okay,
any place?
interesting enough, there's 3 things going on that I'll share. And the first thing that's going on is Bill Parkus had a meeting with all 14 plants. Everybody showed up, and they did show a high interest in it. The other thing that we're doing to maintain that high interest is once I get these going, and I have to be careful because I'm not sure, I might pull the Detroit plant one earlier and then just only train on the 5,000 because it seems like it's going to be a much better system. We're going to actually have free operator trainings course. That's part of the free operator training course. So basically they can get continuing education credits by coming in and learning about the system. And then they don't have, the community doesn't have to pay for that. They just have to get the operator there.
We're going to come up with the funding, and we don't want another 2 or 5 year program that's.
Okay, so then the third thing is that there has been a submittal to the state because of the Flint thing going on. We'll just call it the thing, the Flint going on. There has been a submittal, so the state has requested what type of drinking water things do we need. This has come back up. The other difference is that when you were looking at the budgets before, we were looking at $1 million budget. This instrument, first of all, cost 1/4 of the GC mass specs. So it's going, and if you got a package deal, I'm pretty sure you can get them between 40 and 50. They have run in Ohio for 5 or 6 years without any real maintenance. Yes, there's, what we call disposables, but we were estimating it would cost about $2,000 to $4,000 a year. We're estimating right now. We will have a hard number at the end of the study on what that really is.
My last question is, what time frame are you looking at to have this done and have a...
The grant was funded for 6 months. We had a much slower start than we thought. So the last instrument came in last week at Marysville. So I would say by November, this is all going to be packaged up, and we're going to know.
Thank you.
Or we're going to have a report to
Any
hand
other
off.
questions from commissioners? Jeff?
Howard and I were here pre-water monitoring,
Yeah.
and when, and you hit on those numbers, I think it was, spending $1 million or something like that back in the day, and I'm assuming like anything technology, this is much better what's available today than what was back in place in '06, things like that. cost
Well,
coming down.
actually, I'll take a stab at that. No, this actually unit was available in '06 or something very similar to that. And they just, I think I'm going to go back. I think it's really critical to pilot what you're going to do ahead of time to make sure it's feasible. And that was not done. This is a much more simpler instrument than the
You have a
others.
business plan before you start the business.
A business plan, plus also not just a business plan, but bring it in. I mean, drinking water plants do this all the time, right? You don't go out and make a major investment unless you actually make sure it can treat your water. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we walk down and say, oh, we're going to get ozone, and they turn on with GAC.
But
because
pre-06, the water monitoring discussion wasn't even really, maybe behind the scenes per se, but it wasn't front and center, or there wasn't a lot of discussions, about it at the time. It wasn't happening at the plants, correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't think it was happening, and actually,
So, you turn the clock back.
I kind of I'll just give you my short history on this. When this was happening, I was up at Lake Superior State. I had just left Cincinnati Water Works, which has a very functioning system. They've gone through 2 different types of detectors since this whole thing. Not once have they ever considered using a mass spec, which was the detector you guys had at this system. And I kind of mentioned that as things once I saw what was going on, it's like, what do you guys, you got to use your experience. So and again, if this doesn't work, we've dumped 1 grant into it. We tie it up and say the technology isn't there yet. We're not ready to invest in it. I think it is because, like I said, we have small plants on the Ohio River doing it, but let's make sure.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions for Judy? None? I would just like to say, in light of what's happened over in Flint, I think every community in Michigan certainly is, and possibly the United States, is on high alert about the quality of the portable water they're getting. And this certainly will, I think, give assurance to the people in Marysville as the monitoring goes forward. I thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, and I actually want to thank John and Steve and Barry, who's not here, but they really, since the other one shut down, they've always stayed on top trying to keep this going. So,
Okay, thank you.
yep.
Any other updates from commissioners? None? Moving on, conceptual initiative, any from administration? None at this time. Old business, the Woodsong Trail Design Contract Amendment. Mark, did you?
As you know, we've been working on getting a canoe and kayak launch installed at Woodsong County Park. We have a $50,000 DEQ grant that was awarded to the county. Part of that process was to get a permit from the DEQ, and after about a long time, we got the permit late last year and started the goal. The hope was to be able to build the trail down to the launch with staff in the off season. We took a big crack at it last winter when we didn't have much snow to plow for a while, and found out quickly that that was unrealistic. So what we're asking now is for approval to have the design professionals convert our plans to construction specs and actually bid the work out this next winter. So I'm asking for a $4,000 increase in fees, up to $4,000 increase in fees to PM Blau Incorporated to do the plans and specs, and then work with the county purchasing department and staff to get it bid out, and then help us analyze and then supervise the work.
Just out of curiosity, Mark, do you want this for final action, or is no big hurry on?
Well, it'd be great if it's for final action, but it's not the end of the world if it's not.
In case some commissioners have additional questions. Any questions for Mark?
I'd make it for final action.
Okay.
Support.
It has been moved and supported for final action. Any other question or discussion from members? Seeing none, I'll call roll.
Commissioner McConnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Bone?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Rushing?
Yes.
Commissioner Greatop?
Yes.
Commissioner Heidemann?
Yes. Thank you, Mark. New business, the proclamation July as National Park and Recreation Month for final action. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Support?
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carried. The landfill truck scale support agreement with the Fairbanks scale for new business.
Make motion forward, full board?
It has been, we have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Dunn. Any questions? Commissioner Greatop.
How does this tie into the truck scale that we just did out there? Is this an add-on to it, or is this something different?
This is the maintenance agreement that goes along with the new scale that we just purchased.
Thank you.
How much is that going to be? I'm on the wrong page.
$10,500.
$10,500. Okay, any other questions? Could we call roll on that?
Just moving it to final full
It's
board.
going full
Yeah,
board.
it's going full. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Smiths Creek landfill activities report. I would entertain a motion that we receive and file that report.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or discussions regarding information on it? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Any other environmental or public works matters? Seeing none, we'll go on to information only. The MSHDA grant closeout notice. We spent all that money, huh?
Make motion receive and file?
Board.
It's been moved and supported. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Receive and file packets.
So moved?
Support. Been moved and supported. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Move we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Howard, I would make a suggestion, maybe go to the Judiciary Public Safety. The reason the gal from the 1A is stuck in traffic, she's going to be here shortly. I got my
Okay.
text from Commissioner Tommy, and so that's a short one, and we will get to her when she gets there.
You were right next
I
door.
went the wrong way. Carlos.
We'll call the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Tamian? Commissioner Heidemann?
Here.
Commissioner Bone?
Here.
Commissioner Dunn?
Here.
Commissioner Rushing?
Here.
Commissioner Greatop?
Here.
Commissioner McConnell?
Here. It says we're having a public hearing, but
We're deleting it.
that needs to be deleted from the agenda.
I would move we delete the public hearing from the agenda.
Support. We have motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Ask for a motion to approve the amended agenda.
So moved?
Second.
Support?
We have motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any citizens to be heard? Seeing none. Any updates? Yes, sir.
Just very quickly, I attended the 211 meeting that we just had this past week. We are the last county in the state of Michigan to adopt the 211 program. It should be online and live as of September. Any citizen wishing to get any sort of information, you can dial 211 to get that information. It could be about clothing or personal or household needs, disaster services, education, employment, food, meals, healthcare. It goes on and on. Government assistance, transportation, volunteer services, all kinds of things. Kind of sounds like 24 hours, 7-day-a-week concierge at your disposal by dialing 211. Currently, it's being funded by several different organizations, DTE, SEMCO, United Way, a few other people are kicking money in to get this thing up and running. And when it's up and running, we probably need somewhere in the neighborhood of about $25,000 a year to keep it moving forward. So it's not a lot of money. So just to give you a quick update, and once it does go live, we'll let you know for sure when.
In the counties that have already been using this, they're getting good response.
Getting a good response. Yeah, we are going to be in what's called the northeast piece, which comes out of Saginaw. There's I don't have the map in front of me, but we take from St. Clair County kind of around and then over towards Saginaw, and then all the way up to the top of the lower mitten would be the section that we are in. Kent County seems to be by itself. Wayne, Oakland, Macomb seem to be by themselves, and then there's several other sections. UP is by itself. So, yeah, they're getting a very good response on it.
Good. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
I just had one thing to bring up, and it has to do with the ORV. The countywide ORV ordinance. It was addressed in 2011, I believe, and it never went any farther. I've been asked from quite a few different townships. There are a few townships that actually have their planning commissions working on trying to get an ordinance of their own in place. And I know the sheriff was hoping that we didn't have a bunch of individual ordinances, that we could have some type of a countywide ordinance. I've talked to Carrie to see if we could look at the procedure that would be necessary to bring this back and look at it as a countywide. Talking to Sheriff Donelon, he was hoping that if it would be passed, that everybody could look at it to try to keep it intact for a countywide, and then they would have an opt-out period. So if they really found out there were some problems or issues that came up, that they could, at the end of, or I guess at any time, but he was hoping to give it a year to get a good test and a feeling for it. So I think we'll be looking at doing something with the public hearing.
I spoke to Larry Simons today. They have a township supervisors meeting coming up either in a week or 2 weeks, and I talked to him about possibly getting that on the agenda, a couple items just as updates to get in front of the supervisors to start, I guess, the discussion a little bit again regarding it. So,
Yeah. Yes.
We had been working with the undersheriff, and I think we had it loaded up and ready to go, and then it kind of got put on the back burner. So I think it can be reactivated pretty quick. We
worked with Al Francis on this, and it's in place. I just talked to Al the other day. Everything is still sitting there. Nothing has changed. I don't think we need to do anything to it at all, except bring it back out and move with it.
when we discussed this last time, Greg, it was probably a 50-50 on townships that wanted it and didn't want it and things like that. But to my point is, if we did adopt something, everybody would have the opportunity to opt out if they did not want it. So you currently have some people that want it that are trying to put something in place. Let's say half of them are trying to put something in place. Everybody's doing a little different flavor. And from an enforcement standpoint, it's a nightmare, to be quite honest, because, this is how they do it in Riley, this is how they do it in St. Clair Township, this is how they do it in Clay. At least then if you have a unified deal, then it's the same, similar enforcement. Then if the locals don't want it, they have the ability to opt out.
Well, if we're going to go forward with this, draft a pretty presentable letter, and I'll take it like I did last time to all my townships. I have 6 of them. Ira currently is one of the township that does. The other 5 at the time we brought this up did not want it. But I could explain to where it could potentially be a good benefit for them with the sheriff covering this with the countywide ordinance, Because once they adopt their own ordinance, like we've discussed before, once a township has their own ordinance, they are the enforcing agent.
Yeah.
And there's cost involved with that. Now, if you have a police force that we currently have, that's already covered. But you take the general law townships, a lot of them don't. So that might be a good selling point to say, look, this is gonna, the sheriff wants it, they're gonna enforce it. So but if we could come up with some good talking points. I'll go to all my townships before we come up to a vote, and if I can get the majority of my townships on, I'll support this. If it's still 5 that don't want it, I can't support this.
Well, when you say you can't support it, what are you essentially, if there's, there again, they have the ability to opt out.
I understand.
So if you just vote no and you just don't even put it on, then we get back into the proverbial whatever show. So at least if we do it, then then it gets kicked back to the locals. Then we at least set the ordinance, countywide, that everybody plays by that same table. A couple of the ones that I have talked townships, to be quite honest, they didn't want to publicly have to go to their people and do the opt-out on it because they didn't want the public, they didn't want the public breathing down their throat. They'd rather have the commissioners be the bad guys on it. Those are the couple that I had spoken to. So it's kind of, you still have that ability to do that.
I think also that, you got to think about giving even the people that don't want it or that do want it, you got to give them that option. So if, let's say you have 3 of your townships that don't and 2 of them that do, but you vote no because 3 of them said no.
Actually, I got 6.
I'm just using numbers, Dave. But what I'm saying is that you have now eliminated those that wanted the possibility of getting it. Whereas if you give it to them, then the ones that don't want it can opt out. That way, everybody gets what they want. If you go the way you're talking about going, then you're going to eliminate those who want something. You're taking away from those guys. I mean, that's how I'm looking at it, and that's why I'm looking
I
at
have
it
a
from
different
my
perspective.
my
I
department,
represent
so.
6 townships, and if 90% of them don't want it, or 85, 5 out of 6.
But you
I'm
could
gonna
give
side with the
you could
majority.
give everybody what they want.
Well, that's where I think if we draft it up, I can go to each board again and present it and say, this is actually to your benefit, and explain to them why it is, and maybe change their perception on it.
Good. Howard?
I'm just curious, are we talking about an ordinance where, they can opt out before they've even given it a try? I'd like to see them at least give it a try for a year to see if it works. If it doesn't work, yeah, we want out.
They had absolutely no issues in Huron and Sanilac County. When we did our research, we talked to them. They had absolutely no issues with any township anywhere in that entire county, in both of those counties. Nobody opted out.
If we don't act, it's going to be a mess.
It'll be a mess.
If we don't
Currently,
take some
currently,
action.
there's only 2 that have it. That's Clay and Ira, and Clay has their own police department, and they police Ira. So Clay can police Ira and Clay and enforce their own ordinance. But if you go someplace else and they don't have an ordinance, there's nobody to enforce it. If they pass their own, then they have to enforce it. The sheriff won't enforce the local
But
ordinance.
you're looking at the northern counties that support this, no issues. Does Macomb County have an ordinance? How are we, because we're kind of in between, so the northern counties, I can understand that very well. Gaylord snowmobiles that go right on the right way of the roads with snowmobiles. Do we want that here? And I'm not saying this is for something else, but ORVs. does Macomb
Snowmobiles are
have it?
exempt from this ordinance.
So
Yeah.
I'm definitely for bringing it up, and I'll try to be a good salesman on it.
Good. All right, that's all I was doing. I know it's coming up, it's at a couple planning commissions already, so I think if we wait and just ignore it, we're gonna end up with individual ordinances, and then that's gonna open up the old Pandora's box, so. Carrie was gonna work on some information, and maybe we can get some packets out to everybody to get to our townships and villages.
Yeah, like I said, I already talked to Larry today about getting on the agenda, and that is either, he's going to get back with me on the date,
Okay.
to just at least resurrect the discussion. So
Good.
I'll let you guys know when that township meeting is.
Thank you.
Please do.
Anybody else have any other updates? Conceptual initiatives?
Excuse me.
Old business? New business? Friend of court?
Renovation.
Renovations?
Make a motion that we do forward this, and we're gonna have discussions, but make a motion that we forward this to the
Okay, we have a motion and support
Excuse me.
for discussion. This is Renee Topolowski, and she is in charge of this program.
Good evening. As you have seen from my written memorandum, The front of court has acquired space that has been vacant on the first floor of the courthouse. It was formerly occupied by the public guardian. That space is adjacent to my office. It's about 708 square feet. So the court had asked for proposals as to what are we going to do with this vacant space from all the court officials, and it was decided that it would be best utilized by the front of court. So what we have planned for this program, for this vacant space, is to create a program that's called early intervention. And what we foresee is having all brand new cases go through this early intervention program so we can educate the parties as to the court process, what's expected of them, what is custody, what is parenting time, what is child support. We have an average of 1,500 brand new cases each year. That's a lot of brand new customers coming into our office that, quite frankly, are not usually represented by attorneys. So as a result of not having the education from an attorney, the clients generally are misunderstanding the process or what's expected of them. So there's a big gap there that we can fill and educate the general public on how to work through the court system. So we find a need that this program is going to educate the public, and it's going to actually follow through with our mission statement that the front of court has created. The vacant space, we've been working with an architect. He's come through. He's taken a look at the floor plan and what would be the best way to renovate the space. We're anticipating to seat up to about 30 people, which would be like a classroom type setting. I could also use it as a multi-purpose room where I could do staff meetings. I could do staff trainings on a big tutorial or a big webinar, a big screen post mounted to the wall. I could hold staff meetings in there. So there's a lot of functional use for this space. To give you a little background on the projected costs, at this point I don't have any actual contractor costs, but what I'm looking is get approval today on the project, and then I'm going to move forward with getting contractor bids to bring back to the board. But the architect has projected that the construction costs are going to be around $55,000. And then there's additional costs for furniture, carpet, equipment, etc. So the overall cost of the project would be about $73,000. The unique situation with how my funding of my budget works is that I have incentives that I earn based upon the productivity of my caseload. And so I have revenue that is separate, or incentives that I have earned separate from the general budget. So I am able to use those revenues to make the renovations and create this program. So what you should understand today is that the general fund will not be impacted at all from this renovation project. This is going to be coming solely from the front of court's budget, a separate budget that we have. And what's even more exceptional is the way that our funding works is that I'm also reimbursed on those expenditures. So I get a reimbursement of 66% of those expenditures. So at the end of the day, the actual project cost is it's going to be under $25,000. Now, when you look at that, I mean, that's pretty remarkable with that reimbursement aspect. But the additional information you need to understand is that I can also bill for what's known as indirect costs for lighting, electricity, computers, maintenance, security, all those indirect costs that I can bill per square foot, I get reimbursed on as well. So it's going to also generate an additional revenue on an annual basis of over $15,000 just by acquiring the space. So not only am I being reimbursed at 66% of those costs, I'm going to have an annual revenue coming in at over $15,000 a year. So that's pretty exceptional. So today I don't have the actual numbers for you in regards to the contractor bid itself, but I anticipate that it is going to be at or below what the architect expected. So for August, I want to bring back to you the actual contract itself from those costs. Are there any questions on the renovation process or what we anticipate?
It looks like the room, I'm going to guesstimate at the size, 18 by 40 feet or so.
It's 740 square feet, but the width and depth, I don't have that.
708, and I'm looking at it, trying to get a perspective of the room. So
Yeah.
make it like 20 by 40, that gets you to 800 square feet.
Probably about right.
No, I just make a comment about, I guess, the program in general. I think if anything that you can do on the front end, what you've talked about, just understanding process, how it works. I get a handful of calls, from constituents that are dealing with front of the court issues throughout the course of the year, and it's tough, it's a tough place for both parties to be. And a lot of it is that basic information thing, and that, they haven't been involved in that before. They just don't understand, and, those types of things. So any work you can do on that, I think, really helps, and it should help by the time it hits the caseworkers and people have a better understanding of what the expectations and those types of things are, so.
It's good to educate and build a relationship up front too, so they feel comfortable and they can communicate with you. Quite often, if they avoid us, they're not sure what's going to happen, so they may not call. So it's better to get them involved in the process right from the start.
Very good.
So we need to send this to the
I already got a first and a second on it.
second. Is there any other questions at all from Renee? None? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Renee.
We have a proclamation, I'm assuming someone has this, for recognizing Detective Colleen Titus for 25 years of service.
I would move the proclamation recognizing Detective Titus for 25 years of service for final action.
Support?
We have motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Are there any other public safety matters, judiciary matters? Seeing none. Motion to receive and file.
I would move that we receive and file packets at our desk.
Support?
We have motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn.
So
We adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Can we do human services now? So we can get the presentations. Human services, yeah.
She here.
I think she's here now.
Good evening. I'd like to call the St. Clair County Board of Commissioners Human Ways and Means Committee.
Human services, Duke.
Oh, sorry. Wrong one. Human Services Committee to order. Could I get a roll call, please?
Commissioner McConnell,
Here.
Commissioner Tamian, Commissioner Heidemann,
Here.
Commissioner Bone,
Here.
Commissioner Rushing,
Present.
Commissioner Graytop,
Here.
Commissioner Dunn.
Here. Any additions, deletions, changes to the agenda?
Make a motion, we approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Citizens to be heard. Are there any citizens to be heard tonight? Seeing none. Updates. We have a certificate of accreditation presented by Orlando Todd.
Good evening, I'm Orlando Todd, and I'm with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and I'm here on behalf of our Director, Nick Lyon, and our Public Health Director, Sue Moran, and I'm here today to present a certificate of accomplishment for accreditation to the St. Clair County Health Department. And I think many of you know that accreditation is a quite grueling process where you go through 12 standards for 12 programs. And this process started for St. Clair Health Department back in November, and we're happy to say that they passed accreditation with a 99%, which is really high for the state of Michigan. So I think that's a lot of accolades. And I want to say also to Dr. Annette Mercantant, and I see that Steve Dimick is here right now. They do a really excellent job with their programs. You all should be very proud of the health department and the work that they do here in St. Clair County. Couple things I want to mention, and that did tell me, she said, remember, people want to get out of here, so I want to be brief. So a couple things I do want to mention is that St. Clair Health Department is one of the few health departments, the only health department, should I say, in the state right now that provides vaccines for international travelers. They also have a really good, I want to say Annette does a very good job with building relationships throughout the states with the other health departments and other programs that's going around. The food program here is exceptional. We never get accolades about the food program, hardly. Isn't that correct, John? John is here, and I want to say that Steve does an excellent job with the food program. A lot of times people don't think about what we do in the health departments, but when you think about your food, your water, the sanitation, and prevention, when things go wrong, it's the health department's right there in the front lines. So with that being said, I would like to present the certificate of accomplishment for accreditation to Annette Mercantat. And Steve, if you'd like to come up also. I want to give them a hand. Commissioners, I want to thank you right now for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, because the local health departments cannot make it without your support. You know, we have a maintenance of effort where you give money to the health departments, and we really appreciate that, and to keep that going, because the health departments, they serve the underserved in the communities, and that's what we're here for. So what I would like to give a hand to you also for your job that you do. Commissioner Bohm, I know that you're a big supporter of the health department, so I just want to say thank you very much out there, and I can't thank you enough, and as Annette said earlier, I have to make this brief and get out of here, but I want to present the certificate.
I just want to comment that this is not a reflection of me. This award is directly from the hard work of my staff. They do this every 3 years. It's grueling, and they do a fabulous job. This is all your health department staff. They're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations. Are any other questions for Dr. Mercantile or anybody? Seeing none. Any other updates? Seeing none. Conceptual initiatives? Nothing. Old business, seeing nothing. New business. Item A is the Area Agency on Aging 1B Annual Implementation Plan, Resolution 1620. And we have with
I'll make
us...
a motion, we forward this to the full board.
Support.
That Greg? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Ann Langford, and I am Director of Community and Business Advancement for Area Agency on Aging 1B. I'm very pleased to be here. I really enjoy working with the folks in St. Clair County, and we've developed great relationships over the years with seniors and the service providers in the county. I am here, as I come every year, to ask for your support and recommendation to approve our 3-year implementation plan. Area Agency on Aging every year has to have their plan of work approved by the county commissions and also the state. We come to you, and we actually, I believe we've sent you the plan in advance for you to read. But I do want to just summarize a little bit of what is in it. As an area agency on aging, our primary focus is to keep folks living independently in communities that they wish to live in, and we do that through direct service. We use the funding that we get from Older Americans Act dollars, Older Michiganians Act dollars, and also local funding from the county, and also the senior millage here in St. Clair County. We provide services to folks at home through local service providers. We provide an 800 toll-free hotline that anyone can call to get assistance, and we get about 60,000 phone calls a year across our region. We are very strong advocates in Lansing. We advocate for policies and legislative support and financial support for the services that we're able to deliver and work with our partners to deliver. Our Older Americans Act, Older Michiganians Act budget totals about $22.5 million for the year, and we've allocated for St. Clair County about $2.9 million, which is roughly what we allocated last year, and that's designed to serve directly 9,000 individuals. In the plan, you'll see not too much has changed from the services we provide. Each year we do a survey, a stakeholder survey of seniors and providers and caregivers, and ask them of our array of services, what is the most important to you? Should we have to make decisions on limiting service? And every year, home delivered meals, adult day health service, congregate dining, information assistance have come to the top as a priority, and we do allocate funding based on priorities. What you'll see differently this year is the service home injury control has risen in the ranks, and that is having accommodations made to someone's home, such as bathroom grab bars, ramps, smoke alarms, such as that. As you can imagine, in homes that are older, it takes a lot more money and resources and time to keep the homes in order, and so home injury control, the demand has gone up, so we've put a little bit more money toward that service. In keeping with one of our values of innovation, we continually try to diversify our revenue. We know that we can't rely just on public funding, and so we have sought out partners, and we've got awesome community partners that help us with services and donations and contributions, and we've also made some really good partnerships with healthcare systems. We know that there is a big gap between someone being well at home, maybe failing a little bit, having to go to the hospital. Then when they get out of the hospital, what happens when they go back home? What's to prevent them from readmitting to the hospital? So we've partnered with some healthcare systems to provide transition services to keep people from returning back to the hospital, and we've also invested in quite a bit of evidence-based programming, wellness programming, to help folks stay out of the hospital and stay out of the healthcare system in the first place. And so we are really going to put a lot of effort next year, in the next 3 years, to strengthen that capacity. Another area that we're focusing on the next 3 years are caregiver resources. We're hearing more and more from folks who are caring for mom and dad or grandma and grandpa, where they are struggling beyond just the financial struggle of caring for someone. It's stress on them. It impacts their ability to do their own job. And it's just, as you can imagine, there's just a myriad of demands placed on someone who is a caregiver. So we have right now one caregiver training program for folks who are dealing with or working with loved ones with dementia. But we're expanding that. We're adding 2 more programs for caregivers of just senior loved ones who might need extra help. So hopefully we'll see some impact there and to reduce some caregiver stress. And frankly, when we get phone calls to our hotline, I want to say over 50% are from caregivers looking for either direct help for mom and dad or help for themselves to help mom and dad. So that's it for my plan. I'll take questions or any comments you have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Langford? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Item A,
You already have a motion.
we have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item B, a proclamation recognizing Lois Kaufman, St. Clair County Library System, 31 years of service. This is for final
Motion
action.
that we make this for final action.
Support?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Just to let you know that there are 2 events coming up to honor her, one with Friend of the Library and one with another group. And I normally would be there, but I can't, and Allison has graciously stepped in to take my spot and read that proclamation to Lois at her retirement party.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Allison.
Item 8, any other human service matters? Seeing none, information only. St. Clair County Health Department points of interest.
I move that we receive and file the St. Clair County Health Department points of interest.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to receive and file packets as presented.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Support.
Thank you much.
This time I'd like to call the Ways and Means Committee to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner McConnell,
Here.
Commissioner
Can't
Tommy,
do that.
Commissioner Heidemann,
Here.
Commissioner Bone,
Here.
Commissioner Dunn,
Here.
Commissioner Greatop,
Here.
Commissioner Rushing.
Here. All right, moving on to 2. I see we have a change in our agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I would move at this time that we delete cooperative office supply agreement from Office Depot, and that we add retirement board appointment for final action.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Can I have a motion to accept the changed agenda?
So moved.
Support?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Moving on to 3, citizens to be heard. Do we have any citizens wishing to be heard? Seeing none, we'll move on to updates. Do we have any updates? Seeing none. Conceptual initiatives. We have none. We have no old business. Moving on to 7A, Workmen's Compensation Agreement with Mackinac Administrators, LLC.
I'd move we move this, send this to full board?
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed. Okay, we added the Retirement Board appointment for final action.
At this time, I would move that we add the Retirement Board appointment for final action, that being Michael Baranowski. I had asked him if he would step up to the board. Do you have your paperwork with him, on him there?
Yeah, it's on the agenda.
Okay, it's on the agenda then. Known Mike a long time. Mike's a financial background guy. He has moved up a chain of command. He now is the CEO and head financial guy for Downriver Community Services. They have 3 different locations downriver. I think he would be a great asset to the retirement board.
Do we have a second?
I support.
All right. Any other discussion? I just have one. Where's he live? What district?
5321 Point Trumbull Road,
All right, your district.
Clay Township, Michigan. Yes.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed. And that was for final action. Moving on to other ways and means matter, number 8. Do we have any other? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 9. We have no information only.
I have one, I have one thing, Commissioner Rushing. Our next meeting, which is going to be June 21st, which is July 21st, which is going to be held at the St. Clair Boat Harbor. We're doing the traveling road show at 6 p.m. I will be hosting, and casual attire is mandatory. So shorts.
Define that casual attire. You're
No,
casual,
no,
my casual.
no shorts.
No shoes?
I mean,
No shoes, no shorts.
none of this stuff. So, July 21st at the St. Clair Boat Harbor. Casual attire only.
Ties and
All
bathing
right,
suits.
we have
Got
the
it.
update on the meeting for July 21st, the full board meeting in St. Clair at the boathouse. Do you have any other information only? All right, can I have a motion for receipt and file?
So moved.
And support?
Yes.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.